Every message you have ever sent in your life has arrived incomplete. All, no exception. The letter you wrote to someone you loved, the text message you sent just now, the call you made yesterday, the photo you shared, the audio you recorded. Each of these messages lost something along the way. It may have been little, it may have been imperceptible, but there was always loss. And I will explain to you why this is inevitable, why it is a law of nature, and why, despite everything, we still manage to communicate. Because that's the really extraordinary part. It's not that we lost information. It's just that, even though we lost, we managed to function. And the secret to how we do this is more beautiful than you might think. I need to start with a truth that most people don't want to hear. The universe is noisy. Not noisy in the sense of noisy, although that is also noisy in the technical sense, in the sense that every physical process, without exception, introduces random disturbances in the signals that pass through it. When an electron travels through a copper wire, it does not travel in a straight, perfect, undisturbed line. It collides with atoms. It is affected by temperature. It is influenced by external electromagnetic fields. The signal that enters one side of the wire is not exactly the same as the signal that comes out the other side. There is a difference, small perhaps, but real. Always real. This is not a defect in the technology. It's not a problem that better engineers could solve. It is a property of matter, of atoms, of the particles, from the temperature, from quantum mechanics. Noise exists because the universe is made of things that move, vibrate, collide, and interact in unpredictable ways. Even in the vacuum of space, where there is no air, no apparent matter, there is noise. Cosmic background radiation. Virtual particles appearing and disappearing. Quantum fluctuations of the fabric of space-time itself. Absolute silence does not exist. It never existed, and it will never exist. The universe murmurs constantly, and this murmur mixes with everything we try to convey. And don't think that this is just a problem with electronics or telecommunications. Noise is everywhere. In biology, genetic mutations are noised in the DNA transmission channel. In neuroscience, random firing of neurons is noise in the nervous system. In astronomy, cosmic dust and interfering radiation are noise that obscures signals from distant stars. In economics, market fluctuations are noise that distorts real value signals. Noise is universal. It is the signature of the very fact that things exist and move. If the universe were perfectly still, perfectly static, there would be no noise. There would be no life either. No communication. Not anything. Noise is the price we pay for existing in a dynamic universe. When I started working at Bell Labs in the 1940s, this was the enemy, the noise. Engineers fought him every day. They tried to build more shielded cables, cleaner amplifiers, more precise filters, and every improvement helped. A little. But the noise never went away. It was like trying to dry the ocean with a sponge. You can absorb some water. It can even dry a puddle. But the ocean is still there. Vast, inexhaustible. Always present. And I asked myself, why? Why is the noise so persistent? Why can't we just eliminate it? And the answer, when I finally understood it, was devastatingly simple. Because noise is not something that is in the channel. Noise is the channel. It is not an impurity that contaminates the transmission medium. It is an inherent property of any transmission medium. Anything that can carry a signal can also generate noise. They are two sides of the same coin. The same physical property that allows copper wire to transmit electrical signals, electron mobility, is the same property that generates thermal noise. You can't have one without the other. It's like wanting an ocean without waves. Water is what makes waves possible. And what makes communication possible is what makes noise inevitable. When I understood this, I understood that the fight against noise was fundamentally poorly formulated. You can't beat the noise. You can't eliminate it. You can't run away from it. He is everywhere, in every environment, at all times. The right question was not how to eliminate the noise. The right question was how to live with it. how to transmit information reliably despite the noise. Not in his absence, in his presence, always in his presence. And the answer to that question was the heart of my 1948 article. The answer has two parts, and both are surprising. The first part says yes, it is possible to live with noise. It is possible to transmit information with an arbitrarily small error rate, even over a noisy channel. The second part says that this has a price. The price is the transmission fee. You can have near-perfect transmission, but you can't have near-perfect and fast transmission at the same time beyond a certain limit. The cover canal city is the ceiling. Below him, perfection is possible. Above it, loss is inevitable. But let me be more precise about what loss means. Because the word has many layers, and each layer reveals something different about the nature of communication. The first layer is physical loss. This is the most obvious. When a signal travels through a medium, it loses energy. Light attenuates when passing through an optical fiber. Sound dissipates as it travels through the air. A radio wave weakens with distance. This is the law of physics. Energy conservation in action. Part of the signal energy is absorbed by the medium, converted to heat. Scattered, irretrievably lost. A signal that leaves with power 10 arrives with power 5 or 2 or 0.001, depending on the distance and the medium. This loss of power is continuous, predictable, and, to some extent, compensable. You can amplify the signal, place repeaters along the way, increase transmission power. But each amplification also amplifies the noise. You never gain clean power. It always gains dirty power mixed with more noise. It's like trying to brighten a dark photo by increasing the brightness. The photo is clearer, but the grain, the static, the visual noise, everything becomes more evident too. The second layer is informational loss. This one is more subtle and deeper. When noise mixes with the signal, it doesn't just weaken the signal. It modifies the signal, change the bits, swap zeros for ones and ones for zeros. And when a bit is changed, information is lost. That energy, information. The distinction is crucial. You can lose all the energy in a signal and still preserve the information, as long as someone records the pattern before the energy dissipates. But when the noise changes the pattern itself, the original information is destroyed, not weakened, destroyed, replaced with false information. And there is no way to distinguish with the naked eye between an original bit and a corrupted bit. They look the same. They're both zeros or ones. But one is true and the other is a lie. And this lie, once introduced, can propagate, contaminate other data, corrupt calculations, distort images, destroy messages. The third layer is entropic loss, and this is the most fundamental of all. Even in the total absence of noise, which is impossible, but let's imagine, there is loss, because every message to be transmitted needs to be encoded. It needs to be transformed from its original format into a sequence of symbols that the channel can carry. And all coding involves decisions. Decisions about what to keep and what to discard, about how much precision is needed, about how many bits to allocate to each aspect of the message. These decisions are inevitable because no channel has infinite capacity. No storage is unlimited. No transmission lasts zero time. Think of a digital photo. The reality that the camera captures is continuous. Infinitely detailed in principle. Smooth gradients of color, microscopic variations of light, infinite depth of visual information. But the digital photo is not continuous. It's discrete. It is a grid of pixels, each with a color represented by a finite number of bits. Conversion from continuous to discrete is, by nature, a loss. You are approaching infinite reality with a finite representation. The approximation can be good. It could be very good. It can be so good that your eyes can't tell the difference, but the difference exists. It always exists. Details that are between one pixel and another are lost. Color nuances that do not fit into 24 bits are discarded. Information beyond the camera's resolution disappears forever. And this happens with any type of message. When you digitize a song, you lose detail between samples. When you compress a video, you lose the visual nuances that the algorithm deems less important. When you convert voice into digital data for a phone call, you lose the frequencies that the codec decides to discard. Every digitization is a waste. All compression is a loss. Every transmission over a finite channel is, in some way, a loss. And here is the central revelation. This loss is not a bug. It's a feature. It is not a problem to be solved. It is a principle to be understood and managed. Because if we demanded absolutely perfect transmission without any loss of any kind, at any layer, communication would be impossible. Nothing would be transmitted. Because absolute perfection would require infinite capacity, infinite energy, infinite time. And none of that exists. Real communication, communication that works, that connects billions of people, that transmits trillions of messages a day, works because it accepts loss. Work with her. Manage her. Minimize it where it matters and tolerate it where it doesn't. It's like human vision. Your eyes do not capture all the visual information available. Far from it. They capture a tiny fraction. They lose the vast majority. Most of your visual field is blurry, low resolution, coarsely ground. Only a small central region, the fovea, has high resolution. And even the fovea does not capture all the information available. There are frequencies of light that your eyes cannot detect. Infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, all lost, but you don't feel blind. Don't feel like you're missing out on anything. Because your brain is extraordinarily good at working with incomplete information. It fills in gaps, infer what is missing, builds a coherent representation of the world from fragmentary data. The loss is real. The experience is complete. That's the magic. And communication engineering does something similar. The systems we design do not eliminate loss. They manage it. They decide where to lose and where to preserve. They decide which bits are essential and which are unnecessary. And they use all available capacity to protect the bits that matter. Error correction codes are the central tool for this management. They add strategic redundancy to the message. Extra bits that do not carry new information, but that allow the receiver to detect and correct errors introduced by noise. It's like sending a message and, along with it, a summarized version that serves as a conference. If the message arrives and matches the summary, everything is fine. If it doesn't match, the receiver knows there was an error and can correct it. But redundancy comes at a cost. Each redundancy bit is a bit that could have been used to transmit new information. So there is a balance. More redundancy means more protection against errors, but less useful information transmitted per second. Less redundancy means more information per second, but more vulnerability to noise. Finding the perfect balance is the heart of communications engineering. And my theorem says exactly where that perfect balance is. Channel capacity is the point where the amount of useful information is maximized, with sufficient protection against errors. It's the great point, the best that physics allows. And no one can go beyond that point. Nobody. Because beyond capacity, the loss becomes irrecoverable. It doesn't matter how much redundancy you add. It doesn't matter how sophisticated your code is. Above the limit, errors exceed the ability to correct. Information degrades. The message gets corrupted. Communication fails. It's a wall. Absolute. Immovable. But below the threshold, something magical happens. You can get arbitrarily close to the perfect transmission. The error rate can be reduced to levels so small that they are essentially zero. 1 error every billion bits. 1 in every trillion. The loss, although theoretically present, becomes so small that it is practically irrelevant. It's like saying that every bridge has a microscopic chance of collapsing due to quantum fluctuation. True, in theory, irrelevant in practice. The loss is there, but it's so small that it doesn't matter. This is what modern systems do. Your cell phone operates below channel capacity. Error correction codes reduce the error rate to tiny levels. The message you send arrives essentially perfect. Essentially. not absolutely, because absolute does not exist, but so close to perfect that the difference is undetectable. And do you know what makes this possible? Acceptance of loss. Recognition that loss is inevitable but manageable. That perfection is impossible but near perfection is achievable. That the objective is not to eliminate noise but to live with it in an intelligent way. This shift in mindset, from eliminating loss to managing loss, is perhaps the most practical contribution of my work. Think about how this applies far beyond engineering. All human communication suffers loss. When you talk to someone, part of what you want to say gets lost in the translation from thought to words. Some of it gets lost in the pronunciation. Some of it is lost on the way through the air. Part of it is lost in the other's hearing. Some is lost in interpretation. The message the other person receives is never exactly the one you sent. Never. And this is not because you're imperfect. It is because communication is imperfect in nature. It's noisy, always. When you write an email, you choose words. Each word is an approximation of the thought. Each sentence is a compression of the complete idea. You can't put everything you think into words. It cannot convey all the nuance, all the emotion, all the context. Something always gets lost. How many times have you reread a message you sent and thought, that wasn't exactly what I wanted to say? How many times has someone misinterpreted your tone? How many times has a joke been lost, a sarcasm missed, a genuine emotion sounding artificial in the text? This is not your fault. It's a loss. It's noise. It is the nature of communication operating exactly as theory predicts, and the receiver reads your words and reconstructs a meaning. But the reconstructed meaning is never identical to the original meaning, because the reconstruction depends on the receiver's context, from his experiences, from the mood from him. Give him attention. The same sentence, read by two different people, produces two different meanings. Loss is inherent, not in half. To the communication itself. Misunderstandings between people are not accidents. These are inevitable consequences of a process that is fundamentally noisy and lossy. All conversation is an imperfect transmission of imperfect ideas through an imperfect channel to an imperfect receiver. The wonder is not that misunderstandings happen. The wonder is that we understand each other so often. And we understand each other because human language, as I have shown, is enormously redundant. There is so much repetition, so much context, so much predictability in the way we speak, that significant losses can be tolerated without the essential message being lost. It's exactly the same principle as error-correcting codes. Human language is a code with built-in redundancy, not designed by an engineer, but evolved over thousands of years by the selective pressure of communication in noisy environments. Our ancestors who communicated better in noisy environments survived longer. Their languages, more redundant, more resistant to noise, prevailed. Evolution did what communications engineers do, added redundancy to combat noise, without knowing, without planning, but obeying the same laws that I formalized. When I think about all of this, what strikes me most is its universality. Loss is not a human problem. It's not a technological problem. It's a cosmic problem. Stars transmit light that fades with distance. Genes transmit information that becomes corrupted with mutations. Memories transmit experiences that deform over time. Everywhere information moves, there is loss. Everywhere a signal travels, there is noise. Everywhere a message is encoded, decoded, stored, retrieved, copied, transformed, there is degradation. The entire universe is a noisy communication channel, and all the information that exists in it is, at every moment, suffering loss. Slowly, imperceptibly in most cases, but inexorably, the stars go out. Genes mutate, memories fade, signals weaken, bits get corrupted. Nothing escapes. Nothing is preserved forever with absolute fidelity. The second law of thermodynamics, which says that the entropy of an isolated system always increases, is, in a sense, the same statement I made about noisy channels. Disorder always grows. Loss always happens. Perfection is always temporary. But, and this is the part that gives me hope, loss can be fought, not deleted, combated, delayed, minimized, managed with codes, with redundancy, with intelligence, with engineering. We can build systems that preserve information with extraordinary fidelity for extraordinarily long periods. We can send messages billions of kilometers away and receive them almost intact. We can store data for decades without noticeable degradation. We can communicate clearly despite the noise, despite the distance, despite everything the universe throws at us. Loss is the condition. Engineering is the answer. And between the two, between the inevitability of loss and the possibility of near perfection, exists the entire universe of information theory. All my work. The entire revolution that began with 77 pages in a technical journal in 1948. Every message suffers loss. Something is always lost. But what survives? What arrives on the other side despite the noise, despite the distance, despite everything? This fragment that resists is enough. It is enough to connect, to communicate, to understand. And perhaps that is the most profound lesson of all. That perfect communication is impossible. But sufficient communication is all we need. And that's all physics allows. And that's all we ever had. And yet, we built the entire world on it. It always gets lost. But what remains is what matters. And learning to protect what matters, to let go of what doesn't, is the essence of all communication. Human or technical. Ancient or modern. It's always been like this. It always will be.